I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time.
Hello and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I'm always excited to be with you because I get to introduce you to incredible women. Women who are change makers, women who have dared to step out and take a risk in their lives to make a difference. They're way showers. And so what I want you to know is that they absolutely bring to us the possibilities that we can explore because we're all here for a reason. We're all important. And I want you to know, I really feel like it's the time for women emerging on the planet to bring our brilliance and our connectivity and our gifts, because I think we need a little bit of balance on this planet with everything that's going on. So I do these every week. And so you can come back, go to all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon. You can go YouTube video, look for Women Awakening with Cynthia James. You can also go to cynthiajames.net. That's my website. That's where you can sign up for my monthly newsletter or my community. And there's lots of gifts and things for you there. I am so grateful that I get to introduce you to this amazing woman. Her name is Joanne Greene. She's an author, and I'm calling her an adventurer. And what I noticed is she uses her wit, her humor, and her intelligence, and that's what makes her a great storyteller. We both have the same publisher. She writes, and so how we met was just incredible. It was over Zoom, and it was awesome. Her debut book is called By Accident, a memoir of letting go, and it's widely available right now. We will be talking about that. Also, she co-hosts a podcast, and it's called All the F Words with Gabi Moskowitz, and two writer friends, nearly 30 years apart, explore a range of issues. We will definitely be talking about that, and we will be talking about her fabulous personal life and family. So, Joanne, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Cynthia, I'm delighted, and I can't wait to meet you in person someday.
Thank you. So I'd like to know how you grew up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up just outside of Boston in a very large town called Brookline, Massachusetts, with quite a history. JFK, John F. Kennedy, was also born in Brookline. So I have a very vivid memory from my childhood of the day that he was assassinated, and a large group of us just marched and stood vigil outside of his birthplace. It was a real Jewish community where I grew up, and you say I'm an adventurer. That's interesting. I take that as a great compliment, but I had the need to get out of this community and go as far away from home as I could. So my parents, who were older, I was an oops baby. So actually part of why my book is called By Accident is that my very existence was an accident. I wanted to do things differently than my siblings. I wanted to do things differently than everyone, it seemed. And I wanted to go as far away from home as possible. They gave me a 1,000-mile limit for college, and I found a school exactly 1,000 miles away. Thinking I was going to be an actress, I went to Northwestern University and very quickly realized I was not going to be an actress and switched over into radio, TV, film. And most of my career was in radio broadcasting. And I did feminist talk shows in the 70s in Berkeley, California, and went on to work in San Francisco for many years, hosting all sorts of issue-oriented talk shows and producing features and anchoring the news and doing things like that.
Well, and you're beautiful. And I just want to say, this has got nothing to do with our talk, but you got great hair. Well, so I just want to say that. And so, of course, you be in media, whether
let me say radio, right? We always
I got it.
For radio, that you don't have to see me at all. But the hair, I actually have come to love certain things. You know, as women, we are so self-critical, and I was no different. And I grew up hating this about my body and that about my body, and right. And now, as an older woman, I have come to embrace much about the way that I look, and I am super grateful for my hair, which this is its color. I don't do
Yes.
a thing to it. I now get haircuts. Cynthia, dare I admit this publicly? I was paying $140 for my haircuts. I have now someone who's doing my haircut for $30.
Well, they're doing a good job because you look fabulous. And for those of you who are just listening, go on YouTube and see her. She's beautiful.
It's not that great. You'll be disappointed.
Well, I want to talk about your radio shows and on for feminists. That was a very powerful time for women in the 70s. And so what made you want to focus on that?
I was a passionate feminist always. There was so much going on. The kinds of issues that I was covering at the time this was brand new when there were rape crisis centers. There were shelters for battered women. These were stories that hadn't been told in the past. There was a battle for the Equal Rights Amendment, which God only knows why we were never able to pass that. It was the least controversial thing in the entire world. I did a lot of stories about women of color, in fact, I was in the Bay Area. Coyote was the prostitutes union. Women who were saying, Coyote was an acronym for call off your old tired ethics. And these were women who were saying, hey, it's our choice. This is what we want to do. It's the oldest profession, and we want rights, and we want to unionize. So many stories. And there was just a plethora of people, fascinating women to interview. I had the great opportunity to interview Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan and Kate Millett, and
Wow.
so many of these heroines of the movement. And, we made a lot of strides, and not as many as we had hoped. And it's a battle that must go on. Reproductive rights, my gosh, if anybody would have told me then that we would actually lose reproductive rights in the 21st century, I wouldn't have believed it. But
Well, absolutely. And the whole thing with the ERA, that women mobilized to stop it, was fascinating to me. That we are back, where we were 50 years ago, and people feel righteous about the fact that a woman should not have choice, is striking to me. So I want to just ask you about this book. What caused you to write this book?
I'd always been a writer for hire. So I knew somewhere in me there would be a day in my future where I would write what I wanted to write, beyond just journal entries and silly little poems that I would write. And I had a 10-year period in my life, as many of us do, where I was faced with challenge upon challenge upon challenge. And any number of them might have felled me, but I was able to draw strength from somewhere. I think in part my ancestors, who were immigrants and fled persecution in Europe, religious persecution, and went to a country where they didn't speak the language and figured out a way to build a life. I think that's in my DNA. So after going through a series of challenges, which I'm happy to describe, in brief, I realized I'd learned a lot, and that there's a certain wisdom that comes with age. And I think I'm so glad you're doing this podcast, Cynthia, because I think older women in particular, have tremendous wisdom that can benefit everyone, but certainly younger women coming up. And I wanted to share what I had learned, because here's the thing. Life is going to deal us all kinds of stuff, right? We're going to have losses. We're going to have injuries, illness, failures, relationships will end, jobs will end. We'll have to start over. We can't control that necessarily, but what we can control is how we respond to it. And that's what I learned. And I learned that there are ways of changing our behaviors. We can't change who we are. We can't change our personalities. We can't change our character, but we can absolutely change the messages that we give ourselves. And we talk
100%.
to ourselves all the time, right? Who among us has not said, "Who do you think you are?" to ourselves, that you think you can stand up there and do this. I'm sure many times during the process of writing this book said, "Oh, you think you can write a book? You think you have the stamina? You think you can stick with a project for years and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it?" Because I have the attention span of a fruit fly. So, but then I had to say something else to myself, which was, "You can do this. You can do anything." And I want women to say that to themselves. I can do this. If it means asking for help, ask for help. We can help one another. We must help one another.
100%. And I just want to throw in here, anybody out there who's a writer, wants to be a writer, has gone through exactly what Joanne just said. What have I got to say? It's all been said. How are we going to, I mean, you can go down that rabbit hole, but to know that whatever wants to come through you is coming through you for a reason. And when you can absolutely claim and proclaim that, yes, I can, I'm here to deliver this message, the universe will give you the delivery system. So I just love that you said that. So why this title other than you were an accident at birth?
Well, the bigger reason is that it took being hit by a car as a pedestrian for me to absolutely stop. I had to stop because I was incapable of controlling anything. I had serious injuries, 4 pelvic fractures, and all the soft tissue on the right side of my body was crushed. I had a severe trauma reaction, as anyone would after going through something like that. And this happened shortly after a 4-year period in which I had been mired in grief. I lost my mother and my sister, my beloved sister, within 5 months. And then a couple of years later, my brother, my much older brother, who had been in great shape, suddenly had a hemorrhagic stroke and died. So I went from being the baby of the family to the matriarch of the family, like that. And I had finally dealt with all this grief and moved through it and was back up to speed. And in my case, it was warp speed. I do have to admit, I am a person in constant motion, and I was doing and doing and doing. And this accident absolutely felled me. Not only could I no longer do, I could control nothing. I absolutely had to ask for and receive help for everything, including going to the bathroom and feeding myself. I had to learn to accept the way that people help and not judge. If that rings a bell for anyone in the audience, why are you making the sandwich like that? And I had to learn to be still, which is something I'd never known. And what does it mean to be still? What does it mean to really slow down and reflect? What does it mean to know that this moment isn't going to last and not crumble under the weight of the trauma and the physical pain? But I had to tell myself over and over again, this isn't forever. This is going to be a long time. They told me that the recovery, I should expect the recovery to take 1.5 years. How can you wrap your brain around that? I understood things in 2-week periods, right? Anything that had ever happened to me before had been a recovery of a couple of weeks, during which time you're getting better and better. This was some weeks, no progress at all.
Yeah.
And how do you cope with all of that? So I had a number of tools that I developed over time, and I felt that they were tools that might be able to help other people. And so this is the story. It begins with the accident. The opening scene is the crash. And then it follows me for the next few years, where even after I recovered from the results of the accident, I then had to face some other big life challenges, a bad diagnosis, which turned out in the end not to be so bad, and a series of other things that I think people will be able to find themselves in my story. I'm getting really good feedback, so
Yeah.
I think it worked.
Well, it's an incredible story. Okay, I want you to hold the book up for the people looking on video and for a little over closer to you. Yeah, perfect. By accident, yes. And you all, it's out there. It's on Amazon. It's in all kinds of places. Get this book. So
Thank you. It's an audiobook too for people who
oh,
prefer to listen.
perfect. It's really interesting. I just really want to talk about moments of fragility like you just described, where you are helpless. I had a knee replacement and for almost a month, I couldn't take care of myself. And it was striking because I'm a independent woman who knows how to take care. So I can tell that there's a sisterhood here. And all of a sudden you have to surrender and let the universe and people in your life take care of you. So as you're writing this, were you re-experiencing moments of emotions while you were writing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to learn how to write in such a way that the reader would feel what I was feeling. So I had to feel it. I had to draw upon the actual feelings that I had to get myself back into that mindset. And I have to tell you, even recording the audiobook, which happened months after I had finished writing the book, it was so draining and exhausting because the amount of emotion that I had to call up, if I was terrified, I had to sound terrified. And then I would record a chapter and then I would have to go lie down, which, I am not somebody who lies down in the middle of the day, you can imagine. I'm like an Energizer bunny. But so this was, yes, I had to go back and relive it and it was very painful. And even writing about my losses, I part of why I wanted to write this book also, Cynthia, was my sister has children, and after she died, she had grandchildren. My brother had 5 children and many grandchildren, and I wanted something about them to be captured in writing that future generations could read. I wanted stories about the way we grew up and what our family was like. I wanted that to be captured because it all gets lost very
Yes.
fast, right? There's so much that I want to tell still. And so now I'm writing short essays, and that's a podcast too. And I'm
It's
just putting
beautiful.
it out there because time is so precious.
It most certainly is. And I just want to say, listeners, as you age, that statement will become truer and truer. Time is very precious. All right. So I want to talk about your podcast, but I want to talk about, okay, you have been married with your husband, and you call your creative partner for 41 years.
Well, 43 now.
43. Okay. All right. And you've got sons and you've got grandchildren. You know, um, Talk to me about how you found harmony, because I don't like the word, work-life balance, but how you find harmony in this nurturing this relationship and being a mom and also, you know, doing your work in the world.
It's a lot. No question, it's a lot. My husband and I are at our core friends.
Mm,
So that is, and we make each other laugh. And I think that's so important. And are there annoyances? Of course. Living with any human being, there are going to be annoyances. But, you have to pick your battles. It's the
that's
same
right.
way with raising kids. You let a lot of things go because it's just not worth it. I know there are certain things that I'm going to bring up and they're going to be issues and we're going to talk them through. We also tend to resolve things before going to bed at night. I don't like
Yeah, right.
going to bed angry. So we'll talk it through. But really, after all these years, we know each other so well that we accept certain things about each other and we save the confrontations for the big issues.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And yeah, I tell people relationships and marriages are the biggest workshops you will ever do. 100%. Well, I want to know about this podcast called All the F Words.
So I
Tell
have two podcasts I need to tell you about.
Okay.
And
Okay, great.
all the F words, Gabi is also a writer and very funny. And she's 30 years, nearly, she's like 29 years younger than me, and we're friends. And our little gimmick for this podcast is that we tackle subjects that start with the letter F.
Okay.
So when you think of the F word, we don't talk about that F word. We talk about fanaticism, feng shui, fake meat, fundamentalism, family functions. I mean, we have 60 episodes and we don't run out of F words. One of us in each episode researches the F word. And so there are always really interesting new ideas to bring to the fore. And the other of us shows up and shares from our personal experience. And some of them are funny. They're often irreverent. Did one on filth, and we brought in a woman who writes erotica for women. So they're all over the place. We did one on feminine hygiene when there was the tampon shortage, and all about the inequities and what goes on in third world countries where women don't even send their daughters to school when they're menstruating because they don't have products. I mean, it's really tragic.
That's right.
So, any number of F words. So that's one podcast. The other one, and the one that I'm most excited about right now, is for those of us with very short-term attention spans, 4 minutes, sometimes 5, never more than 5 minutes. And they are my personal essays set to customized music. And it's called In This Story with Joanne Greene. And that's where everything that didn't make it into the book is finding a home. And they're stories about absolutely everything. I just wrote one about candles and the role of candles in my life to enhance moments, to uplift, to mark time. I did one about how to speak to adult children. How we're their managers when they're little, we're their consultants when they're teenagers and in their 20s. But once they're fully adult, you really need to have a whole new method of communication. So I wrote about that. I sold my mother's china. It was quite an experience, and I feel unburdened, and I never liked it. It wasn't me. It didn't feel nostalgic. It had to be hand washed. Can you imagine each dish? It had to be stored in special things. It has a new life now. It's with a new. So things like that.
Well, I love both of these podcasts. I want to know how people find you and how they find your podcasts.
Well, first of all, I will write back to anyone who writes to me, and that's a promise. I love people, and I love talking to people, and I am loving right now this phase of my life where I get to talk about the book and meet incredible women like you on podcasts and in person and at bookstores and at libraries. My website is Joanne, JOANNE dash or hyphen Greene, GREENE. That's it, joanne-greene.com.
Beautiful.
So you can find me there, and there's a way to communicate with me through the website. You can sign up for my newsletter. I'm doing a newsletter about once a month, but you know what? Not necessarily, because here's the thing. We have to stop being so hard on ourselves.
Yes.
Right, Cynthia? I mean, this is after a lifetime of I was on radio and television and raising kids and, juggling so many things, taking care of my mom as she aged and my sister as she went through chemo and so many things. And now at this point in my life, I am cutting myself some slack and doing exactly what I want to do. I'm not making a penny, but I am doing exactly what and
hey, I hear you and ditto. So, same last question of every guest. And this show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening on the planet at this moment?
Well, certainly it's long overdue. I think women have lived under the patriarchy in so many cultures, in so many eras, at so many times. And we really need to think beyond the paradigms that we've grown up viewing, that you are only as good as your performance, that your house has to look a certain way, that your children have to behave a certain way, that you're being judged at all times. We must awaken to awe, to being able to look at the beauty in the world and allow it to fill our hearts and fill our souls. And as you say, when you follow your heart, often the universe will show you the path of creative expression, if that's what works for you. I think we need to trust one another and listen to one another and have real conversations.
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much. And I love real conversations. It's now my dog is up there barking at a deer. Isn't that interesting? Um, 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 it's I think it's our time to talk. It's our time to connect. It's our time to support each other. So I'm very grateful that you have been here with me today. I love the title of your book and what you're doing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Cynthia. And thank you so much for the work that you do. It's so important. Everyone go see Cynthia's TED Talk and go to her website. It's cynthiajames.net, right?
It
and
is.
and learn more about Cynthia and how you can be a happier woman.
Amen, amen. Thank you. All right, ladies, I'm going to say the same thing to you I say every week. I just say it in a different way. There is no more time for you to play small. There is no more time for you to run and hide and pretend you don't know, because you do. There's something in you that wants to come out. There's something in you that wants to be created. There's something in you that wants to be revealed. Say yes, and the universe will correspond with you. I'm so grateful to do this with you every week. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Blessings.